Good morning, everyone. Good morning to all of you who are connected as well. I'm honored to be here this morning in my old haunt, as it may be. Having been a past president of this institute, this august organization, I was quite humbled when I approached the institute's auditorium because I saw the pictures of the past presidents. And I actually couldn't recognize myself, and I realized that time has flown. So thank you for inviting me, and I'm delighted to be here this morning to share a few thoughts. And I thought, since it is an audience of chartered accountants, of people who are in business, I would stray from my normal speech and be a little more technical, because I guess you would probably like to see the thinking behind, as well as the deeper understanding of the macro fundamentals, which prompted certain actions of the government to do what it has proposed to do. So, in that sense, I would preface my remarks by saying we have inherited some tough conditions, but the aim is to not stray from the original theme of our government, which is to usher in prosperity. So we have not deterred from that overall objective, and we see the COVID situation as being yet another one of those conditions that will place a few roadblocks. But still, for all, we would need to move forward, notwithstanding such roadblocks. We are used to that kind of a situation. I remember during the time of President Mahinda Rajapaksa, there were several roadblocks that were in our way. There was a global crisis, global financial crisis, economic crisis, banks were crashing, we had our own war to deal with, oil went up to $145 per barrel. So it was not an easy passage. But yet we were able to manage a growth rate of 6.8% on a yearly basis and ensure that all our macro fundamentals were brought into shape. We inherited a country which had a debt to GDP ratio of 91% in 2005, and when we left in 2014, it was down to 70%. Inflation was in mid-single digit numbers for over 6 years by that time. We had done a huge infrastructure development within the entire country. The per capita income went up from $1,242 to $3,890. The GDP of our country rose from just 24 billion to 79 billion. So we have faced extraordinary challenges and come out strong because we had some clear ideas which were implemented. Now that's the key in this entire exercise. So I think I would like to allay any fears of people who sometimes suggest that Sri Lanka may be too ambitious in doing what it's doing, and we need to go and hold somebody's hand in order to do what we are hoping to do. I want to allay their fears and say, if we are focused, we have enough people in our country who are qualified, who are experienced, who are able to take Sri Lanka forward in this fashion. So, having said that, I would say that one of the key areas that this government is keen to usher in is steady growth. Growth is essential if this country is to move forward. Now that is the underlying theme of this entire budget. You would find that we want to see growth being done through the government. We want to see growth even more interestingly done through the private sector. The private sector has been given an enormous amount of space as well as incentives to come and deliver on this growth story. They have to deliver it. That's why I think it's particularly important that institutions like the CA, Chartered Accountants, rise to the occasion, because you have a very, very key role to play. You've got to bring in investment to this country. Investment to be brought into this country is not only the responsibility of the Board of Investment. It's not only the responsibility of the government and ministers. It's your responsibility too. If you strive hard, bring the right messages, give the necessary assistance to the private sector individuals as well as to the foreign investors, I'm sure we can bring in a lot of investment into this country. Just today or yesterday, the new airport expansion was launched. It's a 131 billion, almost $600 million investment, which is going to drive this country forward. Tomorrow, the tire factory in the Hambantota area is going to be launched. That's another $300 million investment that can reach up to $450 million. So COVID has not put a damper on these projects. Everyone knows that COVID will be a thing of the past soon, hopefully sooner than later, but sometime or the other in the lifespan of people, it's not going to be around forever. So we're going to have our movement forward. We're not telling children don't do the exams because COVID is there. We're not telling trainers not to do certain things because COVID is there. We're encouraging. We're saying do what you're doing. So in the same aspect of things, I think Sri Lanka should move forward, and I would, at the beginning itself, request the CAs, particularly the President and his team, to bring in this message that you should also be drivers of this movement to bring investment into this country. So investment side, I think, is important, and to do that we have given plenty of incentives, and I think in due course when the other speakers come in, they would probably refer to those as well, so I won't dwell into those, because I was asked to give the thinking behind this budget, and the first part of thinking is that we need to have growth taking place and sustainable growth. Now let me explain to you what we mean by sustainable growth. I'll use the example of the human-elephant conflict in order to explain it. The human-elephant conflict is there in 14 districts of our country. Many people in Colombo see it only when they see news of an elephant attacking a human being or a human being attacking an elephant, or the elephant coming and destroying crops. Now they see it as a news item, and that's all there is. But when you go to those areas and talk to the people, you realize that in about 14 districts, people are living in fear. They have problems. They cannot get about their normal business. Children cannot go to school. The activities of the entire district closes down by around 6 o'clock in the evening in those areas where there is this human-elephant conflict. So we need to address it. Take another example of the water. Only 42% of the people in Sri Lanka have water. So is that a fair and equitable position for us to feel comfortable? No. We need to make sure that people have water. So to do that, we have to make investments and to make sure that people in the next few years will have water in their taps. So from about 42% of the people now, we would like to see make that at least 95%. We have a kind of a example set during the period of President Mahindra Rajapaksa. At that time, only 70% of the people had electricity at the time that he took office. But by the time he left office, 99% of the people had electricity. What a transformation it does to those people's lives is important for us to recognize. What a transformation it does to business itself, SME sector, is something that we should appreciate and understand. So investments in those aspects will be done by the government, and we would like to see support in other forms coming through the private sector to make use of that situation, so that when people become more and more wealthy and they are able to do their business better, there should be new opportunities created by you. And we would like to see even the Institute of Chartered Accountants getting their act together to go into those rural areas to get your message across, give the support to those people who can then reawaken their lives, reposition their lives. The third aspect is that of the road network. And I don't need to emphasize too much, roads transform lives. When people ask me about benefits, they say, what is the benefit that this budget can give you? People say, not enough goodies, you haven't reduced the prices of anything. Actually, the reduction of prices comes as a political gimmick only. I think we need to now go beyond that situation. When you give a job to a child in a family, it transforms that family's entire way of life. Isn't that more important than the reduction of a price of a tank of gas? That's the question that we need to ask. So we are investing heavily in these kinds of aspects of social life as well as the country's needs. So you would see that when 100,000 jobs are given to the poorest families of our country, some people criticize that, but I would like them to understand it from the context that those families are now being revitalized and reoriented and brought into the spectrum of the country's economic progress. And those are important decisions. So what I would like to stress here is that the investments that would be made with the idea of transforming lives in our country and making those people lead better lives. And in so doing, we also want to ensure that people bring in investments, and for that only we are given certain exemptions, incentives, so that people can really get down to that. We also want to make the government more efficient. As you know, we have been entrusted with this task. I have a special responsibility in that public sector reforms has been entrusted to me by the President. Now I take that as a very important function in our ministry, because I believe that reforms need to take shape, but in my view, reforms have to be soft and be acceptable to the people as well. Sometimes when you wave a big flag and go around saying I'm doing reforms, most probably at the end of the day, you'll find that nothing has happened. But it's important to get the stakeholders involved. So in the next few months and years, we will be doing that. We have to transform many organizations. We also have to make sure that the projects that we have at hand are also implemented as fast as possible, and the way I see, on budget and on time. Now we have around 289 projects which are presently being undertaken by the government in various parts of the country, in various disciplines, and those projects have a total value of about 5 trillion rupees. That's an enormous number. But in order to ensure that these are on time and on budget, a lot of troubleshooting as well as monitoring needs to be done. So we can assure you that that part will be done by the government. But at the same time, we would like to see the private sector also upping their game to make sure that they make use of the opportunities that have been created through this budget and then go forward in a realistic manner. We have been fair with the private sector. Although many people expected, I think even I saw some of the points that were made by the CAs, that they expect more taxes to be heaped. But taxes alone won't be the way that this debt situation could be dealt with. I will deal with that as well. But what we would like to see is real investment coming in, and that's why I'm stressing once again, you can play a huge role and we would like you to do that. Let me get down to the debt. We'd like to see more investment coming in instead of debt, and there is a good reason for that. And in order to make sure that your debt is sustainable, you've got to make sure that your macro fundamentals are in benign areas. One of the key reasons, now you would understand this because you're all accountants, that this balloon happened as with regard to our debt situation is that our rupee depreciated sharply. The rupee depreciation alone in the last 5 years added additional 1.8 trillion rupees into our 13 trillion debt by the end of 2019. Some people may like to gloss over this and not deal with it or talk about it, but the reality, as portrayed in the central bank reports of each year, is that when you add up the 5 years, the depreciation impact on the debt is a massive 1.8 trillion. Now that cannot be used, that cannot be tackled by upping the taxes. That has to be done in the same form that it occurred. That's why as soon as this government came in, we maintained the rupee even with extraordinary measures so that it doesn't depreciate any further. People criticize the decision to restrict imports, but that was done with the intention of ensuring that the overall macro picture was not disturbed. It's vital that we do that, money, because unless you manage your vital big items, you'll find that the other items cannot survive. It's like when you look at the body of the person, if you let the heart deteriorate, Even though you may have big muscles, I don't think you can make use of those muscles. You need to have the most important ingredients, the brain, the heart, in a person's body to be properly positioned. In the same way, in an economy, the value of the currency, the interest rates are vital in order to ensure that the rest of the economy can survive. So we are putting a lot of attention into those macro fundamentals as well. We want to maintain those at benign levels. So it's a balance that we have to strike. Even the interest rate, by allowing the interest rate to unnecessarily rise in the last 5 years, even when inflation was weak and inflation was low figures, we found that the interest rates were much higher. So the arbitrage between the inflation rates and the difference between the inflation rates and the interest was huge. So what happened? What happened was that the budget had to carry that burden. And when we work it out, it's about 1.4 trillion rupees that had to be borrowed further in order to pay back those loans that affected the overall balance sheet of the country. Now these need to be managed. So when you manage these macro fundamentals, you would find that the rest of the picture becomes a lot clearer. And you as accountants, I'm sure you will find tremendous opportunities for you to go forward and do your work. We are trying our best to make sure that when you do your project feasibility studies in the future, that you don't have to lock in a 10% depreciation rate as your one of the assumptions that you make. So that's not an assumption that you can sustain, and your projects will not be sustainable at those levels. So we need to bring that back, claw back, and we are going to do that. At the same time, most of your project reports when you do, if you have to lock in an interest rate of 14% or 18%, I don't think your projects will be viable. You need to have 7-8% at maximum as the interest rate. So that's what we have delivered now. We want to maintain our borrowing record also in such a way that the position will be clawed back to around 70% of GDP, debt to GDP levels by 2025. And that's going to be a slow process, but nevertheless, we are keen to work hard at it so that we can actually make sure that we can deliver on these results. So it's a tough budget. It's extraordinarily at a difficult time, but at the same time I want you to keep faith that the government has shown that it's consistent in what it is doing. Even in the midst of a lot of difficulties, we want to give you the message that this government will stick to its overall plan so that you will have stability in relation to policy making, you will have stability in relation to the macro fundamentals, and we will put our money where our mouth is in order to deliver that. So this year, the fiscal deficit may be a little high, but that is in order to ensure that the revival takes place. When there is a person who has met with an accident, you need to make that person recover. In the same way, when a person is ill, you don't get him to do various other things until you make that person recover. In the same way, when you have an economy that is in difficult times, you need to make that economy recover. First you have to do that. It's only then that the economy can move forward into the next phase of development. So that's what we are doing. So this year we would see a fiscal deficit which would be slightly below 9%. But thereafter, the need for that investment won't be so much. We'll be able to gradually reduce that down to the 4% that we have envisaged by 2025. I want to take you back to the year 2009. That was the year that the war finished. At that stage also, the fiscal deficit went up to nearly 10%. Now that was the reason. The reason was that we wanted to bring in the benefits of the war ending to the people. We wanted to make sure that the recovery process is made on stable ground. That's why we invested a lot of money at that time to bring the North and the East back to its normalcy. And that paid off. You would find that thereafter, in 2010, 11, 12, and 13, and 14, we were able to gradually reduce the fiscal deficit, and the idea was that by 2018, at that time, to have reduced the fiscal deficit to around the 4% mark. But that was a clear objective, and that was clearly seen in the way that we tackled the movement of the economy beyond 2009. So we have a similar situation. Of course, the circumstances may be different. But at the same time, we need to have a recovery. The economy that grew up at around 6.8% average up to 2014 has dropped to about 3% average in the 5 years thereafter. We need to stimulate it once again. That's why certain fiscal measures will have to be taken, certain reliefs will have to be given in order to ensure that the people can once again start doing business. The SME sector has to be supported fully. These days have been very difficult for them, but we have held their hand through this crisis, and to make sure that they are there when the times change, that they will be able to once again stand up and deliver the results that we want them to deliver. So it's an overall concept of providing stimulus, giving stability, giving a clear message, inviting foreign investment, inviting local investment, making sure that we give a good platform as far as the government's position is concerned. We're going to improve the doing business indicators. That's one of the other responsibilities that my ministry will be undertaking. And we can assure you that from next year, we will focus on each of those areas where we are weak and then deliver results on that. We want to see the capital markets being a lot more robust. We want to see the private sector being able to access capital and make use of that capital in their business activities. So it's a large number of to-do lists which we have encompassed and put into one capsule as the budget. In a short period of time, we have been able to put this through, and I want to actually thank the President and the Prime Minister for the efforts that they have put in and the vision that they have created for this country and the need for that vision to be translated. So we have a interesting time ahead. We want to see you participating in those times as partners and to make sure that together we can take Sri Lanka forward, and I wish you all the best in those endeavors. Thank you very much.